Here's Brody Brazil.
There's two things that need to happen here for the next head coach. Number one, they have to be good with young players. They have to be a developer. They have to be somebody who is just in tune with that. But number two, this next head coach is probably going to have to be the one to turn a corner with the Sharks. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're going to have to get closer to a winning record, to competing for the playoffs. This next person, and we didn't really expect that of David Quinn, but it does feel like this next person has some very defined things they need to accomplish, right?
Yeah, and from on-ice standpoint and a culture standpoint within the room, they need to become a team that is just so resilient mentally, and whether that starts off-ice, so it's brought onto the ice, they just need to be a team that no matter what, if you're going in and they won 10 games next year, any team that goes into that building is like, well, we have a hard game. We're going to, this team may not be the best, but they're going to play the right way. And if we don't mind our P's and Q's, they're going to put some pucks in the net. So, and I think, they have some pieces there. They have some guys, I think, in the system that could, if they take a step forward, could really help. And so I don't think it's as dire, they're going to be the worst team ever of all time. But I think it's going to be a struggle. It's going to be an uphill battle. But it's going to be, to your point, the next coach that comes in has to move the needle forward.
Yeah.
Let's move the chains. Like now it's the time to we got to take some steps forward. So at the end of next season, we're like, okay, we didn't have a great season, but there is bright spots, whether Macklin's there and Will Smith is there or not. I think there needs to be a sense of an exhale for fans being like, okay, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel now, because at the end of this year, you didn't really see much light. And wishing for a first overall pick in a draft lottery isn't a great way to go day to day in an organization, being like, we need a messiah and a savior to come save us.
Do you think an internal search? Do you definitely want to go external with this coaching search? Do you want to bring back some familiar names? Todd McClellan's out there. Jay Woodcroft is out there.
Jay Woodcroft's out there.
Joel Ward is out there. Jay Leach is out there. And there are some others out there.
Jason Demers is out there.
Wait, you wanted to be a scout or a development coach?
I'll do everything.
Head coach?
No, development. I like Mike Ricci's job. That's mine. I'd like to be his assistant.
There are so many people kind of in the sphere of consideration. Where would you start with this? And I don't know. Is it fair? Do you have a favorite? Do you like any of those names I just mentioned? Or how do you see this?
I mean, I think familiarity might be good, especially gives you a little bit of bump with the fans. It gives a little bit of a pop, bringing somebody that they know.
Grierzy played for Todd, by the way.
Yeah. You have Todd. I don't know about Todd, because I think Todd might be not looking to rebuild the team like he did in LA. I think Todd will be looking to take an already established team. I think Jay Woodcroft is a great pick.
Yeah.
Or a guy like Jay Leach as well. And I mean, listen, there's a ton of candidates out there right now, because they seem to just be firing coaches left, right, and center. But I think the structure that Woody brings, and having been with him in Edmonton for a brief stint and talking to guys, I mean, he does bring a very relaxed but borderline, very structured military style in terms of guys know where they're going. It's very detailed. And for a young kid, I think it's important to have that kind of structure. So I think he's kind of one of those guys that I think is definitely being considered by the Sharks. And just with him having been there, lived there, loved it there,
right?
It would be a good partnership, because he just knows that city and knows the fans. And him also starting as a video coach and kind of elevating himself. I mean, it's kind of a very poetic return, and fans, I think, would be very receptive to it. And then, having coached McDavid and Draisaitl, I think, is also important.
Great point.
That you've coached top guys, so you know how to handle them. And he coached them, he got them not young, but he got them almost at their end result. So, and he got a lot out of them, let's be honest. Like, he elevated their game, not that they needed it, but I thought he was a good teacher for them. And they liked him a lot. So that's an important thing, is a guy that's able to manage not only the lower end guys in the team, but the top guys. So I see him kind of maybe taking a run at it and I'm sure Gurz's considered that, I would probably go for somebody with more structure and somebody that's been around a little bit longer than a new hire, because
so it's got to be like, because McClellan and Woodcroft have coached obviously in the NHL. They've been the head coach versus some of the other names I mentioned they haven't. So you're saying it should probably be somebody with that on their resume.
I think you need it for at least, you have to give it another go with a veteran coach.
Yeah.
I just think having that many young guys,
Yep.
It's tough. But if you look at like Nashville with Brunette, like, they got a guy that was, Brunette had coached, but not a ton of head coaching experience. And he got a lot out of those young guys. So there's many ways in taking it. It's more deciding, I think, for Gurzy of what style you want to attack as a team. And it goes back to what I said with their biggest thing is finding an identity.
Right.
What's going to be their identity? Are they going to be high flying, or are they going to be a structured team? And what do you want to get out? So I think the coach is going to be tailored around that. And obviously, when the coaches come in and do their interviews, they put in a ton of work and ton of time. I heard those interviews for coaches are pretty intense in terms of what they're presenting to Gurzy of what they want to bring to the team and what style of play within the realm of, they have to research all the guys that are on the team and be like, with what you guys have, this is what I'm going to implement. So I think it's going to be the indication of who he hires is going to kind of show you what direction they're going in. If he hires a Daryl Sutter-esque, which I don't expect him to, but you kind of know which way they're leading, versus if they go young,
right?
Well, you're like, okay, we're looking to be exciting and fresh and new. So it's very much going to be telling what they bring in. But I think Woodcroft would be a good pick with some, I had Dave Manson as well as the D coach, and I got to speak with him a little bit. That's kind of his partner, and they're both very good and very talented. And obviously Todd's always a favorite of mine, but I just don't know if Todd will be vying for a job like that.
Yeah.
I don't think he wants to go through the growing pains again. I definitely think Todd wants to really win. And I think this would kind of be more him chasing a Devils, Toronto.
Sure. Those jobs are open.
Yeah, we're open for business.
Toronto's wide open right now.
Yeah.
So let me ask you the last thing here. So it's kind of the timing of all this coming together. When the draft is late June. I think the Sharks might have a head coach picked out before that point. Like, I feel like that's the draft, right? So you got to have that. But then you also have to figure out pretty soon after the draft, that's when NHL free agency opens up, like, how are you going to build your team? So we've already established the coach is probably going to be selected by the draft. Then the draft's going to happen. And when free agency opens up, what do you see the Sharks building themselves as this year? And I suppose some of that depends on whether you're going to have the kids there or not. But what do you see the rest of the team looking like in terms of what they might add, how they might do it? Because they now do have some cap space.
They do. And, you have to have guys willing to come there. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you just said, they need to get a coach. I think they'll announce a coach in the next month, middle of June, early June latest, because you want your coach to come in and put his footprint. Because if you're doing a rebuild, you need the coach that's here if Gurzy has a master plan, he wants a coach for 3-4 years before he brings in the coach.
Right.
Or if he's going to get the coach now that's going to kind of usher in these young guys, he needs to have a say in what he wants as his free agency guys, because that's just as important. I think that's more important than getting Macklin right now, because I know it for myself, being lucky enough to come into the organization at, 21 and having that group of veterans around me. I mean, I wouldn't have got where I got in the NHL without those guys and their guidance. It's incredible. And it's something that's so undervalued and not talked about enough in the NHL, and that just these young guys that can get into a great insulated group of veterans that teach them the right way to play, I think is so important. And you can't have the inmates running the asylum. And what I mean by that is you can't have the young guys taking over. If you look at like Anaheim right now, they tried to bring in some veteran guys, but there's they're outnumbered with these young guys. And if you look at the Zegrases and the McTavishes, and they just don't play the right way. They don't play defensively enough. You look at Buffalo. Buffalo has not brought in the right veterans, and the same thing happens every year with that team. They just don't know how to play the right way. They haven't built a culture of winning there. And it's not to be hard on the guys or anything, and you just don't know. You learn how to lose.
It matters. This group of players matters that you surround them with.
You learn how to lose as a kid when you come into a league, and you learn that, oh, okay, I'm still getting rewarded. I'm still getting paid, even though we're not making the playoffs. Well, what's my incentive to actually block that extra shot late in the season, as long as I'm getting my points and getting my money? And it's not an indictment on any player in the NHL saying, all these kids, I do believe, want to win, but wanting to win and learning how to win. Like, I wish I never won a cup. I went to some conference finals, played in some game sevens, and I've just learned from watching losing the games and also winning them what it takes to win, and it takes a toll on you. And whether you win or not, you have to be into those trenches and in those battles as a player, and you need to be around guys that have been in those battles. I was around Stanley Cup champions, and you kind of take it for granted in the moment when you first started the NHL, and you're like, I'll get back, and you never do, because you end up going on teams that don't bring in the right guys, and you don't have the right collection of guys that understand the importance of winning and understand what it takes to win. It's a sacrifice, not only on your body, but on your mind and your time. You really have to dedicate fully your life and your season and your well-being to that goal of winning the cup. And you see the teams that win now, and the cream rises to the top in the playoffs, and you see the teams, it always irons itself out. You can't hide in the playoffs. I was always told that it doesn't matter how good your season is, you're judged, especially once you get into your first playoff series. It tells a lot about who you are as a player and what kind of guy you are when things get tough, because you're going to get tested. So it's, those guys that never make the playoffs, it's, you don't even know what it's like. The players in Buffalo and Anaheim that haven't been, you have no idea what it's like to make it into the playoffs, and then what it's like to win the playoffs. So I think it's very important to have guys with that perspective, because, everybody watches, the young kids come in and they watch Instagram and TikTok, and they see the Michigan and they see how nice it is to do all these moves and the toe drags. But if you watch 5 minutes of the Florida Panther series, or you watch, the way Vancouver's played, it's, those guys are sacrificing everything to win. And if you think that you're going to come in as a young kid and what it's like in NHL playoffs, you have a rude awakening. And I learned firsthand how tough it could be. And I'm so grateful that I had just an amazing cast of veterans around me that were able to kind of prepare me for that, and not only prepare me, but push me and make sure I was ready for those games. And my only wish was that I would have been able to do more of that when I was on the Arizonas and the Floridas, and be able to kind of get that push. But it's a tough business we're in the NHL, definitely, just to win.